Hi, I'm Frank Gaffney with the Center for Security Policy. We're very privileged to have on the margins of a presentation to the Loudoun County Public School Board in Virginia, the person who made, I think, probably as compelling a case as any against the application for the Loudoun Math and IT Academy here that is under consideration by the school board right now. Her name is Mary Addi. She is a former teacher at the Horizon Science Academy in Cleveland, Ohio, a school that has been associated, as is the LMITA application, as we call it, LMITA, with the Gulen movement. And we're very pleased to have a chance to talk at a little bit greater length with Mary than she was able to do in a brief presentation to the board. It was a superb presentation, and I appreciate very much you taking a few extra minutes to talk about the insights that you have based on your experience as a teacher for 2 years in a Gulen movement or Gulen-inspired school. Give us a sense of what that was like, how it manifested itself in your experience.
Well, interestingly enough, when I was hired, I thought it was a little bit odd that all the applicants were, I wasn't quite sure what nationality they were, and then I quickly found out that they were all Turkish, and that was fine. Everybody was very cordial, very nice and everything. And then shortly after I started, my husband, who's also Turkish, came to the school, and he started telling me, giving me some information about the internal goings-on in the school. In particular, I was interested in an administrative position. And when I told him I was going to apply for the position, he said, well, don't waste your time. And I said, what do you mean don't waste my time? He said, those positions are already going to be hand-selected. They're going to be bringing Turkish men in to fill those positions, so you don't have a chance to get that. And, you know, slowly but surely, he told me, you know, the different things that were going on. After we were married, he told me that he was required to give back 40% of his salary back in cash. So every pay period, after he was paid, he had to go to the bank, withdraw a certain amount of cash, take it back to the office manager, who's the Turkish. Again, their office managers are always Turkish, their directors are always Turkish, their deans of academics are always Turkish. Anybody in a higher administrative position is Turkish because they themselves, you know, they keep that little secret among themselves. So they keep a second set of books for the Tuzak money. And the Tuzak money is this cash kickback money. And Mustafa didn't voluntarily give that money back. It was kind of a form of extortion. They held his H-1B visa, and he knew that if he didn't give the money back, they would be shipping him back to Turkey. He was also brought over to be their network administrator. However, when he arrived, they decided that he was going to teach computer classes. My husband is a brilliant IT man, but he's had never set foot in a classroom. He had no idea what a curriculum was, but yet he was supposed to teach the children. And what he told me is what they do is when they bring the Turkish, and it's majority Turkish men, young men, they bring them over to the classrooms and they let them observe for 1 to 2 weeks, and that's their teaching experience. As a teacher, I had to go to school for 5 years. I had to go to school. I have a BA in English and a graduate degree in education. And so, you know, I was a little bit disturbed. I didn't really feel like they were qualified, and certainly there were huge communication issues with the children trying to learn, especially when they bring them over to teach math and science, two very critical areas that require a tremendous amount of communication skills. And although they may be very educated, they did have limited speaking and writing skills, and English skills, proficiency skills. In addition, the majority of them, after I started my investigation into this, after my husband was disclosing this information, and I did my own individual investigation, I did a spreadsheet and found out that 99%, I went through Ohio, Illinois, and Indiana, and I went through all of their schools, and 99% of them, of the Turkish H-1B employees, were under the age of 40, male, and had nothing more than temporary substitute licenses, which I found to be very problematic. One of the reasons that they move them constantly is because they know that they can only have the license for so long, and then it expires, so they have to find another state to move them to so they can get it, or they have to move them to another city so that they can do that. They do the same thing with administrative licenses. The other thing that they do is the majority of them are all Turkish board members, so they make sure that they're. We have copies of emails, and their administrative emails are always sent in Turkish to each other and to board members. That in itself, explains that the majority of them are. But they refer to the Americans that show up at the board meetings as foreigners, and that they will have to have a second meeting if the foreigners show up.
Well,
we have uncovered evidence of vast immigration fraud with the H-1B visas and the green card applications. We have uncovered money laundering. There's a host of different activities, illegal activities that they're engaged in. My husband and I have been actively involved in federal investigations for the past 5 years, and it is my hope that within the near future that this will come to fruition, and we're going to start seeing some people arrested and deported, as they well should be.
let me ask you, Mary, this is a very important sort of filling in of holes in the story that I think the board has been told. One other piece that you've had personal experience with as your husband is the extent to which there is a proselytization aspect to their program. It's often said that it's not so much the Islamist agenda that's what's promoted, but it's sort of masked as Turkish supremacism. Could you speak to that?
Well, certainly there's an indoctrination into the Turkish culture. I mean, I taught in a school where children were struggling just to read and to be proficient in English, yet they were mandated to take Turkish classes, which was a problem, I thought. They offer free trips to Turkey. They offer or subsidized trips to Turkey. They want the employees to visit in the homes. They predominantly like to go into lower socioeconomic areas where the parents, frankly, are very grateful that anybody will be paying any attention to them. And as my husband, by the way, I don't know if I said this, he is Turkish and he is a Muslim. So certainly for them to say that, I'm against either would be 100% incorrect. But my husband became a part of this organization in high school. That's when they start to actively recruit students in high school in Turkey, and they're inundated with the Gulen beliefs, and then those are the recruits that they bring over here to teach in the schools. As far as when they found out that my husband and I had married, they flew in the president from Concept Schools in Chicago to meet with my husband, and they threatened him. They told him that if he did not divorce me, that he was not going to have a job. They harassed his family. They interfered with our marriage. They told him that they would help him get a divorce and find him a Muslim woman. They have caused us tremendous financial and emotional stress over the past 5 years. And I've had a lot of people say, well, aren't you afraid of him, and why are you doing it? I'll tell you why I'm doing it. We are paying for this. These are our tax dollars that are paying for them to discriminate against American workers. They are paid higher than their American counterparts. They are taking American jobs when the unemployment rates are high enough. There are more than enough qualified American teachers. They are handpicking all the top administrative jobs where they get paid far more, and they're discriminating against women. And the majority of them are under 40. So there's a whole laundry list. So that's where my primary focus was when I started this. And I have a website that I started 5 years ago, and I've just, from that website, it's charterschoolwatchdog.com, and from my website I've had countless teachers, parents contact me, other organizations, people saying, wow, we couldn't figure out what was going on. This has been such good information, because what I can't understand is why for 12 years the United States government has allowed them to go unchecked. They have allowed I mean, I just don't understand it. We wouldn't be able to do that in their country or any other country. But yet they can come over here and take our jobs, take our money, and influence our children in any which way they want. As far as they mentioned the character development program, I have to tell you a little bit about that because that's very laughable. They themselves don't teach character development. What they do is another thing they like to do. They'll hire deans of students. They'll never be deans of students because they don't want to directly work with the students. They just want to be the big shots collecting the money. So they will hire Americans who are usually not very qualified and not very good. And one of them, as a matter of fact, that worked at our school, we did the investigation and found out that they had never done, and our principal was actually admitted this in a deposition, he'd never done a background check on the man, and he had been sued for sexual harassment. So those, and he was, by the way, teaching character development. Yeah, he was one of the teachers teaching character development.
Can I just, a related point. Sure. I was in Fulton County, Georgia, where, as you know, there are several Gulen schools. 2 of them have lost their charters so far. The 3rd seems to be hanging by a thread. And I was talking to one of the former parents of a student there, and I should say a parent of a former student who was there. And one of the things that is often said about these schools, and that has, in fact, enlisted a lot of support from parents, is the degree of intensive personal attention that students are often getting. And in particular, I don't know if you had this experience, but one of the things that she said, which was really quite chilling, was that she accompanied her son on one of the school trips to Turkey, thinking that she would be accompanying him on the school trip to Turkey, and it turned out that there was an entirely separate program for the parents. The kids went off in one direction. She had no idea where they were. There was no contact information. There was no pre-notice as to what they were going to be doing. Is that kind of thing, which again suggests that there may be some ulterior purpose here in terms of indoctrination or in terms of, I don't know, brainwashing of kids, that should be of concern to parents, above and beyond the issues that you've talked about the curriculum and about the financing of the school and so on?
Well, absolutely, because as my husband said, they started indoctrinating him at a young age. They do things that I think are really kind of creepy that would not happen in a public school, where they have young men spend the night, they have sleepovers at the schools, and, you know, as a teacher, I would think that would be a huge liability in itself. You know, other than that, you know, I don't really, you know, I really can't speak to that, other than they're, you know, they like to really try to ingratiate themselves into, you know, into the community, into the schools. But, you know, I've been able to see through them, and hopefully it looks like your community has as well. And I applaud this community, and that's why my husband and I drove all the way here, because we respect you tremendously for taking the time and the effort to actually investigating this organization instead of just rubber stamping it like everybody else has. And I really hope that you know, you do prevail and that this school is not opened.
Well, thank you. And the evidence of this level of concern from the community is behind us. The board meeting tonight, which you headlined, really was very well attended by people who share the kinds of concerns that you do. And I, too, hope that the school board will hear what is, I think, the overwhelming sentiment of our community, that we don't need this particular charter school under this particular management. And if that's the case, it will be in no small measure, I think, thanks to what you've done to help clarify what they're really up to.
And I just want to end with one thing, you know, that they are famous for accusing everybody of being Islamophobic or against Turkish people, that we're the ones discriminating. And, you know, it's their great smokescreen. And, you know, people have often said to me, well, why don't they, you know, you put all those things on your website, why haven't they sued you? I told this to Leslie Stahl. I said, they haven't sued me because it's true. You cannot sue somebody for the truth. They know all the evidence that we've collected is 100% documented evidence. And it's in the hands of the federal authorities, and I'm pretty sure they know that too.
Good. Well, Mary, thank you very much for making the trip here and for all that you've done. And thanks to all of you. Well done.